African trash picker finds drunk Arab executive in a dumpster. What he did next is shocking. She was just trying to survive another day, barefoot, her hands covered in the dust and decay of the city's forgotten waste, when she saw something that made her stop cold. Inside the dumpster, among broken glass and spoiled food, lay a man in a pristine suit, unconscious and reeking of alcohol. She didn't know his name or the billion-dollar empire he once ruled from a glass tower. All she knew was that he needed help. And what happened after she took him into her shack will leave you absolutely speechless. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss a single story that could change the way you see the world. Nairobi was never kind to those who slipped through its cracks, and Amina had long stopped expecting kindness. Every morning, before the first sunbeam stretched across the horizon, she was already out, digging, sorting, hoping. She wasn't a beggar. She worked. At least that's how she saw it. The city dumped its sins in the landfill, and she, like many others, tried to find a sliver of worth in them. Shoes with holes could be cleaned. Cans could be sold. Plastic bottles became bread. Her home was a tiny metal structure hidden beneath a concrete overpass. 4 tin walls, a patched-up top for a door, and one rusted mattress she'd rescued months ago. It smelled of damp earth and detergent. And yet, it was hers. That morning started like any other. But the moment she flipped the lid of the 3rd green dumpster behind the Ritzbury Plaza, her eyes froze. A hand. A man's hand. Pale, shaking slightly. Fingers curled like he was gripping onto some invisible thread of life. Her heart leaped. She stepped back instinctively. Was he dead? Was this a murder scene? Slowly, she leaned in again. There he was, a man in a torn designer suit, half covered in garbage bags and fast food wrappers. His black dress shoes were scuffed but expensive, and even through the smell of fermented alcohol and trash, his cologne, strong and expensive, clung to his body. He groaned. Alive. Amina didn't know what to do. She looked around. No one was there, just a few distant car horns and the buzz of early city life. She tapped his cheek gently. "Hey, can you hear me?" His eyes opened slowly, bloodshot, unfocused, but vivid. He looked at her like she was either an angel or a hallucination. He whispered something in Arabic. She blinked. "English?" He nodded weakly, then closed his eyes again. She didn't wait. Using strength she didn't know she had, she pulled him halfway out of the bin. He was heavy. She managed to flag down an old cart boy nearby, gave him 2 salvaged phone batteries in exchange for help. Together, they rolled him across the broken sidewalk and into her world, beneath the flyover, where dreams didn't come, but warmth sometimes did. She placed a damp cloth on his forehead, gave him water, removed his shoes, sat beside him and waited. Hours passed. Finally, his voice croaked. Where am I? You're safe, Amina said softly. I found you in the trash. You were dying. I brought you here. He turned his head slowly and looked at the ceiling. It was patched with newspapers and bottle caps. Then he looked at her. Her face, though worn by life, carried strength. The kind born from enduring storms that never seemed to end. Why would you help me? He asked. She smiled faintly. Because no one else would. He tried to sit up, groaned, then fell back again. What's your name? She asked. Karim, he said, blinking slowly. Karim al-Saleh. The name meant nothing to her. But far away, in a boardroom lined with gold and glass, his face was on every missing person's report. He was the heir to a multi-billion-dollar energy empire. The man who vanished after a family betrayal and a scandal that rocked Dubai's elite. And now, here he was, lying broken in the arms of a woman who lived off the city's waste. She didn't know any of that yet. And he had no idea that this woman would soon be the only reason he chose to live. Karim barely slept that night, though exhaustion weighed heavy in every cell of his body. He lay still on the rusted mattress, staring at the low ceiling, patched with cardboard and soft newspaper clippings, each flapping gently with the night breeze. Amina sat near the entrance, legs crossed on the dirt floor, humming to herself as she boiled water over a cracked gas burner. She hadn't asked him anything more. No demands, no suspicions, just water, warmth, and silence. His body was sore, his mind a battlefield. He remembered the bottle, the rooftop, the city lights blurring as he stumbled out of the hotel, disoriented, lost in rage and shame. His brother's betrayal, the forged signatures, the boardroom ambush. Everything he'd built, his father's empire, was being pulled from under him by the only person he trusted. Then, the alley, the cold, and nothing. Now, he was here, in this place, with this woman. When morning light began to creep into the room, he sat up, groaning from the sharp protest of his ribs. His suit was filthy, his phone missing. He rubbed his face, feeling the dried sweat, the faint cut on his cheek. He was unrecognizable to the world, and maybe to himself. Feeling better? Amina's voice came gently, offering him a chipped metal cup filled with warm tea. He nodded, avoiding her eyes. I'm sorry. For what? She asked. For ending up in your life like this. She smiled. You didn't choose that dumpster, did you? He chuckled weakly. No, but maybe I deserved it. Amina didn't reply right away. She sat down across from him, her dark eyes thoughtful. I don't believe in people deserving suffering. Life gives us enough of it already. Karim looked at her, really looked. She was young, maybe early 30s, with calloused hands and cheekbones that once carried more flesh. Her hair was braided tightly, and her clothes were clean despite being threadbare. She had a strength he couldn't name, but felt drawn to. "How do you live like this?" he asked, instantly regretting how it sounded. She didn't flinch. "Day by day. I collect plastic, metal, anything people throw away. I sell it to the depot. That pays for food, sometimes power, if I'm lucky." He looked around. "This doesn't scare you?" She shrugged. "Fear doesn't feed you. I've seen things in this city worse than sleeping with rats." Karim fell silent. His world had been silk sheets and board meetings. Now, a leaking roof and a broken teapot felt more real than anything he'd known in months. She suddenly stood. "Come, you should wash." He followed her outside. A cracked yellow bucket sat beside a plastic basin. She poured warmed water from a blackened kettle, then turned away, giving him privacy. Stripped to his briefs, he washed as best he could. Mud and filth peeled from his skin. As the water soaked into the earth, he felt like something else was leaving too. Some part of the man who used to walk above others, who had never once looked into the eyes of someone like her. Afterward, she gave him a worn gray shirt and old jeans. "They're from a friend," she said. "He died last year." Karim held the fabric in his hands a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you." She turned to make breakfast, boiled cassava and salt. He watched her work, hands steady, focused. "I don't understand why you helped me," he said again, quieter this time. She paused, then met his gaze. "Because when the world dumps someone in the trash, doesn't mean they belong there." He looked at her, something stirring deep inside, a feeling he couldn't name. Not pity, not gratitude, something heavier. And then came the moment that would change everything. He reached into the pocket of the pants she'd given him and pulled out a metal chain, still intact, still there. It was a pendant, the only thing he had left from his mother, a golden falcon, crest of his family. His past hadn't been stolen, not yet. He looked up at Amina. "I need to find a way back, but I don't want to do it the same man I was." She studied him. "Then don't," she said simply. "Be better." Karim stayed 3 more days beneath the overpass. It wasn't by choice, not exactly. His ribs still ached, his balance was off, and his mind felt like it had been scattered across the streets of Nairobi. But what truly kept him there wasn't weakness. It was her. Amina. In her quiet presence, something shifted. He watched her wake before dawn, wash her face with cold water, braid her hair back neatly, and walk out with 2 empty burlap sacks slung over her shoulders. She moved through the world like someone no one saw, yet she saw everything. Children begging near the bus station, a boy crying for his lost dog, an old woman who'd dropped her fruit. Amina stopped for all of them, even when her own belly growled. Each evening, she returned dusty and tired, but never bitter. She gave him half her food, even when it was barely enough. She taught him how to start a fire with a cigarette lighter and a broken wire. She didn't ask about the ring he hid in his shirt or the name Al-Saleh embroidered in the lining of his ruined blazer. But one night, sitting by the flickering light of a tin lamp, she finally asked what he'd been trying not to say. "Why were you in that dumpster?" Karim hesitated. He stared at the fire. "Do you know what it's like to build something with your soul, only to have it stolen by someone who shares your blood?" Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. He continued, "My brother, Yousef, and I built a foundation together. My father trusted me with the empire, not him. So Yousef forged signatures, created fake financial reports, fed lies to the press, said I was gambling with investor money, unstable, dangerous. I was forced out overnight." He looked at her, and I believed him. I believed maybe I was broken. So I disappeared. I drank. I fell. And then I woke up in your world. Amina didn't react the way he expected. No sympathy, no praise, just silence. Then she said, "You were born with the world in your hands, and you let someone else convince you to drop it." That hit him harder than any boardroom betrayal, because it was true. That night, while she slept, he sat alone and thought about the empire. The press had surely run wild with his disappearance. Maybe they thought he was dead. Maybe Yousef had already taken the reins. But what haunted him most wasn't the empire he lost. It was the version of himself that let it happen. The next morning, he stood at the edge of the overpass and made a decision. He would go back. But first, he had to earn the right to walk through those gold-tinted glass doors again. He couldn't return as the same man who scoffed at people like Amina, who never learned how it felt to share a meal made of scraps or to sleep beside someone who had nothing to gain from his survival. So he started helping. He followed her to the waste depot, carrying sacks of recyclables. He learned to sort plastics by color and grade. He lifted crates, scrubbed the floor of a local food stall for a few coins. He even stopped by the slums' free school, where children crowded into a single dusty room to learn from a chalkboard older than most of them. And everywhere he went, he saw her in the way people looked at him. Respect without fear. Kindness without agenda. That was Amina's legacy. One afternoon, as they shared roasted maize by the train tracks, he finally said it. "I want to help you." She laughed. "You already are." "No, I mean more. This place. These people. There's value here. untapped, hidden, but it's real. If I get back to my company, if I take control again, I want to build something here. She stared at him. You don't owe us anything. He smiled faintly. You're wrong. I owe you everything. Just then, his eyes caught something across the road. A sleek black SUV, tinted windows, moving slowly, the kind that didn't belong in this part of the city. It parked, the back window lowered, and the man inside looked straight at Karim. His heart dropped. It was Yousef. Karim stood frozen. The sun beat down on the cracked pavement, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was the pull of the past, a tidal wave crashing into the fragile life he'd begun to rebuild. Across the road, inside that sleek black SUV, sat the man who had destroyed him. His brother, Yousef. The car door opened. Yousef stepped out, dressed immaculately in a tailored navy suit, gold cufflinks gleaming under the Nairobi sun. He looked exactly as Karim remembered, sharply handsome, immaculately groomed, and utterly unreadable. He smiled as he approached. Karim, he said, as if they were meeting for brunch. You're alive. Karim didn't move. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same, Yousef said, glancing around at the makeshift structures and tin roofs. This is a long way from penthouses and private jets. Karim's hands clenched into fists. How did you find me? Yousef shrugged. A man like you doesn't just vanish forever. Someone saw you at the depot. Word reached one of our Nairobi investors. I followed the trail. He stepped closer, voice lowering. Look at you, dressed in rags, living like a ghost. You've really lost it, haven't you? Amina appeared behind Karim, silently, like wind slipping through cracks in stone. She looked at Yousef with quiet suspicion, then at Karim. Who is this? She asked. Karim didn't take his eyes off his brother. This is the man who stole everything from me. Yousef chuckled. Let's not dramatize. I simply did what you were too soft to do. I trusted you. That was your first mistake. The tension cracked like thunder between them. Amina stepped forward slightly, her body angled protectively. She didn't know the full story, but she didn't need it. She could see everything in Karim's eyes. Yousef sighed. Look, you've had your fun. Your dramatic fall from grace. Now come back. I'll clean you up, put your name on the board again. We'll tell the press you were on a sabbatical, a spiritual retreat or some nonsense. You'll thank me. Karim's voice was quiet, but unshakable. You want me back, so I stay silent. Yousef's jaw tensed. Don't be stupid. You know the value of perception. If you start making noise, I'm not making noise. I'm coming back, but not as your puppet. Yousef scoffed. With what power? With mine, and with what I've learned. He turned to Amina briefly. Her steady gaze met his, a silent nod of support in her eyes. Then Karim looked back at his brother. I was weak before, blinded by trust, by privilege, but not anymore. I've seen what power really is. It's not in glass towers or bank statements. It's in building something no one can steal, in standing for people who can't buy protection. Yousef's smile faded. You're still dreaming like a fool. No, Karim said, stepping forward. For the first time in my life, I'm awake. The SUV engine was still running. A guard leaned out the window, watching closely. Yousef looked at him, silent now. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, contempt or maybe fear. He straightened his collar. Very well, he said coldly. Try to fight. Try to return. But know this. Our world eats men like you alive. And when it does, she won't be there to save you. He nodded toward Amina, then walked back to the SUV without another word. Karim stood still as the car pulled away. He could feel his pulse in his throat. His fists loosened slowly. Amina walked to his side. Are you okay? He turned to her, expression raw but firm. No, but I will be. That night, Karim didn't sleep. He began writing. He mapped out names of allies, old investors who still believed in him, people he could contact once he had a way. He used scraps of cardboard and bits of charcoal. Amina watched silently, her eyes unreadable. Finally, she asked, You're leaving, aren't you? He nodded. I have to. She looked away. He stood, walked to her and said softly, I don't want to leave this, but I have to fight, not just for me, for what's right, for the man I want to become. Amina's eyes filled with something like pride and fear. Then fight, but promise me something. Anything. Don't forget who pulled you from the trash. Karim swallowed hard. I never could. And as dawn approached, the city trembling with new light, Karim knew the next chapter of his life would be written in blood, strategy, and truth. Karim left the slums at sunrise with nothing but a borrowed shirt, worn shoes, and a heart burning with resolve. Amina stood in the doorway of her shack, arms crossed, not saying goodbye, because they both knew it wasn't goodbye. It was something heavier. A pause in a story neither of them expected to start. He turned once, looked at her standing against the golden light filtering through the concrete beams. She didn't wave, just nodded. He nodded back, and then he vanished into the city. By noon, he had made it to an old business contact. Mr. Hatim, an Emirati financier who had once helped fund Karim's first solar energy prototype. They met in the back of a Nairobi cafe known for its discretion. Hatim blinked hard when he saw him. You look like hell. I've been there, Karim said quietly, sipping black coffee. and I'm not going back. Hatim leaned in. I thought you were dead. Almost, but now I need your help. He laid out everything, the forged documents, the exile, Yousef's manipulation, and most importantly, his plan. A clean, brutal comeback, not through scandal, through rebuilding. I need temporary capital, enough to reclaim my seat before the shareholders' summit. Once I'm in, I'll expose the fraud. And I want to build a clean tech initiative in East Africa, starting where I just came from. Hatim exhaled, thoughtful. This isn't just about revenge. Karim shook his head. It's about purpose, and it starts now. Hatim stared at him for a long time, then smiled faintly. Welcome back, Karim. 2 days later, he was on a private plane back to Dubai, clean-shaven, in a borrowed suit, his face once again fit for glass towers and boardrooms. But he was not the same man. He walked into Al Saleh Industries like a storm cloaked in silence. Gasps echoed through the lobby. Phones slipped from hands. Executives who once pretended not to know him rushed forward in panic, offering nervous greetings and wide-eyed glances. Karim didn't stop. He rode the elevator to the top floor alone, jaw set. The doors opened. Yousef was waiting. Well, he said smoothly, arms crossed. The prodigal son returns. I'm not here to play games, Yousef. Oh, I know. You've made quite the noise these last 48 hours. Investors calling, board members asking questions. You always did enjoy theatrics. Karim stepped forward, dropping a thick envelope on the desk. That's a forensic audit. Proof of the falsified expense trails. Wire transfers to shell companies. Fraud. Embezzlement. Yousef's smile didn't fade. Do you really think anyone will believe you over me? They don't need to. The numbers don't lie, and neither do the surveillance logs. I have video of you meeting with a forged signature contractor. Remember Rajiv Mehta? Yousef's face finally cracked. That's right, Karim said. He flipped. For a moment, the silence was so complete you could hear the air conditioner hum. Then Yousef leaned back in his leather chair. What do you want? My title reinstated. Immediately. And the public narrative corrected. Full retraction of the mental breakdown story. I'm not unstable. I was betrayed. Yousef's voice dropped into venom. You think the board will side with you? They already have. The summit votes are in. You're out. It hit like thunder. Yousef stood slamming his fist on the desk. You ungrateful— No, Karim said, voice like ice. You're the one who forgot where we came from. You let greed devour your soul. I let pain drown mine. But I came back. And now— He walked toward the window, looking out at the skyline. Now I know who I want to be. As Karim left the room, he didn't look back. The press exploded within hours. Al Saleh heir returns from the dead. Brother removed after fraud scandal. The story spread like fire. Board members shifted loyalties. Shareholders welcomed him, but the opulence no longer dazzled him. He kept one thing in his breast pocket, the tiny photograph Amina had given him, of her as a child, smiling in a plastic chair outside a crumbling house. It grounded him more than any diamond watch ever had. That night, in a hotel suite high above the city, Kareem stared at the skyline, unchanged, yet entirely different. He dialed a number he'd memorized now by heart. It rang twice. She answered. "Hello?" "It's me." A pause, then softly, "I knew you'd call." He closed his eyes. "I did it. I'm back." And for the first time in years, his voice broke. "I'm not calling to thank you, Amina. I'm calling to ask, can I come home?" The private jet touched down on the red earth of Nairobi just after dawn. The cabin lights dimmed, and the crew offered congratulations, but Kareem barely heard them. He had spent the flight in silence, wearing a crisp navy shirt, the cuffs rolled, his hair trimmed neatly. But the look in his eyes was different now, clearer, grounded. Everything had changed, and yet one thing hadn't. The memory of her. Amina. As he stepped out onto the tarmac, the heat welcomed him like a familiar voice. Nairobi wasn't polished or predictable, but it was honest. And now, for the first time in his life, Kareem was returning to a place not as a man of wealth, but as a man who had finally chosen who he wanted to be. He didn't bring bodyguards. He didn't bring a press team. Just a backpack and one small box. The slums looked the same. Same rusted rooftops. Same laughter of barefoot children. Same smell of smoke from burning sugarcane husks. But when Kareem stepped out of the rickshaw and walked the narrow path beneath the overpass, people noticed. Some stared, unsure. Others nodded, remembering the man who once helped carry crates and scrub stalls. He reached her door. A tattered tarp still served as the curtain. His heart thudded as he raised his hand and tapped twice. Nothing. Then the curtain pulled back, and there she was. Amina. Her braids were a little longer now. She wore the same sandals, the same patient gaze. For a second, they simply stared at each other. She didn't smile. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would." She opened the tarp fully. He stepped inside. The shack was almost exactly the same. Same tin walls, same small stove. But now there were fresh flowers in a cracked vase. A second mattress rolled in the corner. "You didn't change it," he said softly. "I didn't want to," she replied. "It's the only place you ever told the truth." He lowered the backpack onto the ground, then handed her the box. "What is it?" "Open it." She hesitated, then slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a set of keys, a small envelope, and on top a photograph of a construction site in the valley near the slum. "What's this?" He exhaled. "A school, a tech training center. clean water, solar power, jobs, a foundation. In your name. She looked up sharply. In my name? Yes. You saved me when I was worth less than trash. You taught me what value really means. You showed me how to live. This isn't charity, Amina. It's legacy. It's us. Her lips trembled slightly. Why me? He stepped closer. Because when I had nothing, you gave me dignity. Because you're more powerful than anyone in a skyscraper. Because you deserve to see the world you've dreamed of come true. A tear slipped down her cheek. She turned her face away. I don't want your money, Karim. He reached gently, touching her hand. Then don't take it. Take the mission. Her eyes met his finally. And in that long, heavy silence, everything between them was said. Then she laughed, quiet, almost surprised. You always talk too much. He smiled. I missed that. They stood like that for a moment, in the middle of a shack made of scrap metal and hope, the weight of the world between them. Only now it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like purpose. She walked to the stove, poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs. Sit down, billionaire, she said with a smirk. He obeyed, lowering himself onto the floor beside her. As they sipped in silence, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the golden falcon pendant. It gleamed faintly in the light. I don't know where this story ends, he whispered. She looked at him. Me neither. He held the pendant out, then gently placed it in her palm. But wherever it does, I want you in it. And in that moment, sitting side by side in the place where broken things often came to rest, 2 souls, once from entirely different worlds, chose to build a new one. Together. Months passed. But the memory of that first morning, of a billionaire in rags waking up in a tin shack, never left him. Karim returned to Nairobi again and again, not with cameras or headlines, but with steel beams, architects, and engineers. Where there was once garbage and forgotten people, now stood the beginning of something permanent. Amina's foundation, written in silver across a clean white wall, became a beacon. Children who once dug through trash now carried books. Mothers learned trades. Fathers found purpose. She never wanted fame, but Karim made sure she was known, not for saving him, but for saving hundreds, for rebuilding lives without asking anything in return. But what no one saw were the moments that mattered most. Amina making tea in silence while he typed emails beside her. Karim patching a leak in her roof with his own hands, laughing as rain dripped down his face. The way he looked at her, not with gratitude or guilt, but with love. Real, grounded love. One night, he showed her a tiny ring. Nothing flashy. a simple silver band. "I want a life that starts here," he said, "with you." She didn't cry. She just said yes, not because of what he had, but because of what he became. A man who remembered the woman who picked him up from the trash and never put her down. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes the richest hearts come from the poorest places.